Greetings, everyone, and good night. It's a little bit of a later night, and I'm sitting here on the comfy couch at home. And I hope that you're going to join me, whether it's right now or it's next rise tomorrow on Thursday. It's Wednesday night here in Minnesota time. It's about 8:20 p.m. I was going to just shut down and do my reading and enjoy a super quiet evening. And I thought, I just can't. I've got to bring this live stream. I have a few key points that I'm going to make, but I want to kind of fill up a little bit of space with some other important shares that I want to bring for you here. Last night, I had stopped at a convenience store before I went home, and it's a convenience store where I frequently saw my son before he died. My son had become addicted to heroin and opiates and opioids on the street following a skiing accident, and I've been pulling teeth to get prescription histories from Dr. Mark C. Gregerson in Moose Lake, Minnesota, who's refusing to give them to me. I've also contacted the district attorney and medical boards and so on and so forth. I've obtained a court order and I'm still not getting them, such that I could join the Purdue Pharma class action lawsuit. So there are other young people out and about that I see and that I greet. And one young man that I saw yesterday in the convenience store who was really kind of moving around and wriggling. And, a lot of people would have just automatically said, look at that tweaker over there. That dude's really tweaking. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, because although I hadn't seen this young man, who's probably about 30 or so, I know he has a couple of young children. And I know the last time that I saw this, what does it say? Your connection is unstable. Well, hopefully it'll get stable. There we go. I think it's stable again. So anyway, I said I put a bunch of pieces together to this young man. And the pieces that I put together have a lot to do with why certain people find it much more difficult to release themselves from being hijacked from opiates and opioids. He said, what is it? And I proceeded to tell him. And I said, it's going to be in my third book. But I've been doing so much digging, like Wolf, to figure out what it is. In the spirit of love for my child, I told him, I said, I do have some bottles at my house that are going to greatly help you. Well, how are they going to help me? I said, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. They're going to help your thyroid to settle down. So I said, do you mind if I touch your neck for a minute? No. So I palpated his neck just gently with my fingers, and I could feel that his thyroid was hugely oversized and swollen. Huge. I asked him a couple of key questions. Yep, yes, and yes. I said, tell me a little bit about when you were real young and you were in school. I was always tired. I just never had enough energy for anything. And then because I couldn't complete my schoolwork, I didn't have the energy. Of course, I was diagnosed and labeled as ADD or ADHD. I said, hey, are you using right now? Or, because, you're really moving around a lot. You couldn't really hold still. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm on a permanent tweak. I'm on a permanent tweak now. I was like, God, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm actually going through recovery right now. I'm working a program again. But, he said, I just got to get some food to eat. And he was really, although he was twitching, his mental acuity was really, really bright. I said, I've got these bottles and I would love it if you would try one. You're not on a blood thinner or anything like that. No. I said, okay, I'm going to give you one if you want to really, he said, I want to use it. And I will walk over, give me the address. Excuse me. I gave him the address. He came over. I gave him the bottle. And I texted him later. And I said, here's what I'm thinking. And here's what I believe will happen. And it's not going to be tomorrow you wake up and everything's better. It's going to be a little bit of a journey. But let's do it. Let's give it a good, do, not a try, but a do. Let's see if we can get you some help. So that was my day yesterday. And after that, I was like, I was kind of working on that and helping a few people. I called Christina on my phone, put her on video chat, and I said, hey, Christina's also using it. Christina, why don't you just kind of explain? So here was two young people that were kind of face to face on the video, even though they didn't know each other, making a human contact, making a human connection. This is what I do and I do well, and this is what I do outside of what I do as a business. I'm not a hobby, I'm a business, okay? I wanted to cover a couple of things because we have been introducing more and more technology into our world. In 1984 and 1985, I began studying Hippocrates' ways. A lot of people will say, well, those were actually predated, and Hippocrates actually took it from Imhotep and on and on and on. And I could go in, that could be a whole nother 1 hour live stream. So for shortened purposes, the woman, Pamela Masters, that began teaching me in 84 and 85, it was a couple of month long, several weeks long course, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, I forget now. I was a student at West Valley College, 1984 and 1985. Had completed her own course of study at Hippocrates Institute. And she had learned about nature and food and raw food and enzymes and alkalinity and all these things, which I was absolutely green to at that time. I was 23. I was eating the mainstream standard American diet, lots of cow milk, cheese, pasta, a little tiny bit of meat because I never really was a big meat eater. Fire, come on. Fire, come on. Thank you. Let's do that later. And it made such a huge, huge change in my life that I began just taking it further and further and further. And I started working with people to help them to detoxify and cleanse their body. In 1988, I was reading Richard Anderson's book, Cleanse and Purify Thyself, which I highly recommend. And my stepmother, Jean Aragon, who went on to become a PhD in naturopathy as a naturopath, she did the full cleanse with the bentonite shakes. I remember the containers were kind of like a greenish blue color, and the coffee enemas. And I was astounded by how this woman who's 10 years older than myself, who was very overweight, who was somewhat tired looking like I am right now after the ordeal that my son went through and losing my son, the grief that I've been under. And I tell you that within a couple of months, it just shaved years off of her life. All the weight came off. She looked like a very, very young person. So I became very, very attuned to the fact that this works for everyone, that everyone has the ability to cut out the food drugs. And I went on to work in massage when I got to Cloquet, Minnesota in 2002, opened up a licensed and insured professional business February the 1st of 2003. So what I was doing in California, and I worked as a paralegal as well, I brought over here, and now it was a full-time business. And I wished, and I wished, and I wished that all of my clients would have been open-minded to what I had become so used to in Santa Cruz, California. When I did massage and I helped people, many of those people had become and were swearing by becoming plant-based eaters. They were nice and lean. They didn't have a lot of the stink. They weren't spraying on all the body spray to cover stuff up. And so I know from working this type of work with people, and you hesitate to even say medicine, but it's medicine, is to help people redirect themselves from poor habits. And to a very high degree, not just changing your food, but sometimes if we're in the middle of a really, really strong crisis, there's a heavy-duty diagnosis, that individual needs to go on a really purely raw food diet and cut their calories way back so their body can discharge out the mucus, the parasites and everything. And it needs to be done in a supervised way by someone who has substantial experience. For these reasons, I've wanted to open up a center. Now let's get really to the real goodness of the live stream today. As I was looking through the book, Virus Mania, and I'll show you the copy here. This is the paper copy of Virus Mania, and it was published July 31st of 2020 as the second edition. I'm going to be talking about that book a little bit here, and I wrote a couple of notes. When we used to speak about, my uncle, my father was stationed in Germany in the army. My grandfather, Robert Hodges, was military police when he started off in the service, and he was in the Korean War and the World War II, the Cold War. People talk about being stationed in different places, and they were referred to as servicemen, okay? We now have another form of technology, which is RF, radio frequency RF technology, which funds our cell phones, and it funds a lot more than that. Our radio is basically a transmission device, meaning that it is a communication device. So radio frequency that we are employing as a part of our everyday lives in this sea of signals is something that is going to become very, very dangerous, and I'm going to get into that right now. There's a lot of talk about having a vaccine in December, that we're in the month we're in right now, or January. A lot of talk about January. There will be the vaccine. If I saw something by Mark Zuckerberg and Anthony Fauci that was put on a video today, very briefly. Didn't watch the whole thing. We are living waters. Depending on who you listen to, we're 60, 70, 78, maybe even 80% water with these elements. Some of them are very magnetic. We're very electrical. This is a borrowed skin bag that we use for a period of time. And my sense is that the vaccine is going to be more than any other vaccine, different than any other vaccine, and change you in ways in more ways than any other vaccine has ever done before. And I have good reason to believe that. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion and a lot that's been published about the fact that we want to be able to communicate and monitor and surveillance everything. We don't go anywhere without hearing clips and chirps and beeps and hums, and because we're locking our doors and we've got cameras on us, and we're going in multiple locked doors to go into our apartment buildings and our homes. We've got cameras on our babies. This is insanity. It is truly insanity. But once we begin to nanoparticleize our humans and monitor them under certain filtration lights, begin to transmit and receive data as we want to do, or as others want to do, others than ourselves, we lose medical freedom that we thought we all formerly enjoyed. So how did that happen? Well, it just so happens that in the United States, which is a very, very relatively new country, corporation actually, when hygiene started to become a better part of everyone's everyday life, a lot of what happened is many of the diseases started to become wiped out. Malaria. Let's see, what else do I have here? I think the tuberculosis, measles, diphtheria, pneumonia. And so if you go to page 82 of Virus Mania, page number 82, and I really don't think the authors are going to mind that I'm telling you all this. I think they'll quite like it, actually. You'll find out that in 1949, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, was actually voted out. But in an arduous attempt to reposition themselves, even though these diseases had become a thing of the past, they reinvented themselves, seeking out viruses. I think you want to go to Virus Mania and read page number 82. And therein, I think you're going to find something very interesting, which is, as some people like to say at the New England Journal of Medicine, the meat and potatoes of the live stream. I'm going to call it the dragon fruit because that's something I love. The dragon fruit of the live stream. 1949, we had eradicated diseases, hygiene, nutrition, nature. We had it handled. That's only about 70 years ago. So what happened? How did the CDC fashion itself into a surveillance industry where it began to just monitor everything that we were doing? I think you can see how that would happen. I think you can imagine how that would happen. Isn't that a pretty important fact that the CDC was voted out in 1949? And that by 1951, they had already established themselves as a surveillance agency. So watching over the numbers and the outbreaks, and you see, they put themselves into a position of authority. It was just in the spring of 2020 that I took Dr. Sherry Tenpenny's vaccine boot camp, and I want to thank her again for that. We looked at the epidemiology, and we looked at whether or not there were, in fact, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, and there were none on any vaccine. I do not subscribe to having a COVID vaccine. It is against my personal wishes. Okay. I do not wish to be changed, to introduce chemicals into my body of which I have no absolute guarantee about what they are, where they came from, what their intent is, what they choose to be used for, how much surveillance is going to be done about me. I don't care to be treated, and this is why I've advocated for factory farmed animals for a very long time. Is because what you allow to be done to others, and by others, other sentient life force energy beings. I don't care if you're a moth, a butterfly, a caterpillar, a goat, a horse. It sickens me on some level when I see the way that people often treat animals. Okay, I know that it's frustrating to live with animals in the world today at times because everything is so catawampus. It's so nuts. I'm going to look at my notes here because I wanted to make sure I don't miss anything. If we become stationed like a radio and have this vaccine inserted inside of us, with God knows what, we're asking for it. I don't want to be stationed, and I don't want to be tuned, and I don't want to have downloaded inside of me because of nanoparticles the next and the next and the next vaccines and the mood altering drugs and the monitoring and deciding whether or not I need to have mood modifications. I'd like to be a free agent. I'm going to ask you to take a really close look at what happened to the world since 1933, and particularly since 1942. Are we coming up upon being tuned en masse, meaning lots of us or all of us are all going to be thinking this way or that way? All of us are just content, happy little goldfish to sit inside of our bowl, or what I started calling our litter box several years ago. Are we all going to be sort of codified like a zip code? Okay. Graphing out in certain areas and deciding you want all the people to stay inside today and you want them to get out and do this and do that and be super happy to go work their dead-end jobs. I mean, I don't know. But I do feel like once you're equipped with certain kinds of technology, including nanoparticleized technology, which easily could be inserted in modern day vaccines, that to have things administered inside of you without you going to an office and having it injected, but just a compatibility like you have a Bluetooth speaker and a laptop. Okay. Oh, you pick up your smartphone device. You've had the blankety blank inserted today. We gave you a dose of blankety blank because it seems like you were getting a little depressed. Well, if I'm depressed, I like to go walk out in nature for about 2 hours. That's what I do. I don't want a vaccine. I don't want a mood stabilizing chemical. I want my brain the way it is. Okay. I want to be employed in the capacities I wish to be employed. I want things administered I wish to administer. I want to have my own natural behavior and not have directives for my behavior. Okay. So again, I want you to go back to page number 82 on Virus Mania. In fact, I'll pull it up here. Clustering. How to make an epidemic out of one infected patient. I've shown this book to several people just by saying, hey, this is a book you might want to pick up. It's an interesting conversational style read. It's quite a good book. And the comments I've got back were, polio? What? Measles? How do you know? Oh, well, because you listened to and solely engaged with and singularly believed the dominant narrative. But for you, hook, line, and sinker, believing the dominant narrative, advocating and pushing for what you believe is the solution, pushing paper, pushing ideas, pushing punishments and punitive corrective suggestions for those that say, wait a minute, I've been doing the research for a very long time. Doctors hurried up and had that book put out by July 31st of 2020. It stands, res ipsa loquitur. It speaks for itself. I'm in grief and mourning. I lost my child just a little over a year ago. I don't sound the same. I don't look the same. I'm not sitting around boo-hooing and weeping and moaning. I'm studying and researching. I'm working with clients. I'm getting outside. I'm doing my best to educate people, to educate you, not in a put down, but to give you step by step by step. In 1949, we no longer needed the CDC. It was voted out. How did it get back in? How did the CDC and the WHO become such a powerful influence as to basically solicit vaccines? And why are all of you, the ones that are not on board with what I'm saying here, so complicit and willing to just go with the flow and get whatever it is injected inside of you? If the people were able to eat real food, have clean air, clean water, but you see, when one person really, really knows things, they have inside secrets. They know secrets. They want to keep it to themselves or just a few of their friends. They don't want to tell everyone, right? Kind of like me telling the young man last night. Now, if he goes and tells 10 of his friends, and I go and I tell you, and you go and you tell 10 of your friends, uh-oh, what if the people start to get too intelligent, strong, and sure of themselves? What if the elders weren't all doped up on medications and boozing it up every night and eating all kinds of food drugs? They weren't having big, fat, wobbly guts, big, fat butts, and all kinds of bath and body spray all over to cover up the stink, wobbling around with all of their aches and pains. What if they were powerful? What if they were standing up and say, no, you don't? Would you resent, reject? Would you never value someone who says, no, you don't? We have no proof that it's not going to harm the people, nor do we care to be chattelized, turned into property. We don't care to do that. So I wanted to keep this under 30 minutes. That's what I've done. My voice was a little bit warbly today. It's been a lot better. I went and ate some dark chocolate yesterday, and I noticed, bam. And it was just kind of like clogged me up a little bit. I love Hepzibah's in Duluth and Canal Park because they have pure dark chocolate cherries, and that's what I go get. And I was like, I just really need some chocolate yesterday, which reminds me that craving chocolate has a lot to do with copper toxicity. And I've promised you, I could just be on here just spewing my business and just thinking about, well, in these last days before January, let me make money. Let me think about making money. But instead of coming on here, and as I told you, I was going to speak about the doggy sale. There is a doggy sale before I leave. It's $125. The test alone is normally $110. The consult alone is normally $125. So as you could see, it's $235 reduced to $125. That's a sale. A sale is when you take a big chunk of cash off, which means, I'm doing the consult for $10, right? So the consult is just to really, really get you to really experience. I've helped people that said, oh my God, I was going to the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis, and they were doing blood transfusions and everything on our pit bull because we love our pit bull so much. My wife does. She was a big fancy hairdresser in the cities. She worked on a lot of people that were, quasi-celebrities. And they were like, we wish we would have known because we paid you $75 total. And you helped us with everything we needed. Well, now you can get the hair tissue test. So you will see on a report the performance, the pituitary, the thyroid, any toxic metals, all of those important minerals. We are going to get it. So no more itchy dogs, scratching dogs, dropping hair all over the place, dogs with all these big fatty tumors and cysts and lumps and bumps and starting to form cataracts. Cataracts take about 90 days. Excuse me. About 90 days to form. They are a form of toxicity. They are a form of elongated thyroid deficiency, and all of that's going to show up on the test. So I am growing hair. Dreadlocks are coming in. It's growing nice and fast. Started 2 years ago on the dreadlocks, November of 2018. Haven't done a single thing to them. They are forming on their own, and I've got a bunch back here that are pulled back. But you can have hair that'll regenerate and the gray will go away. It will be nice, thick hair. Your immune system will pop up, your adrenals. I'm in the process of healing my adrenals. So that's what's going on. So hair tissue test for canine and the consult is on sale December 1st through the 21st for $125. I want you to go out and tell other people. The CDC was voted out. We didn't even need you Get out of here. We need medical freedom. We don't need medical tyranny. We don't need medical authority. If you don't know how to heal disease and you don't know how to heal people, you shouldn't be making all that money with all your big buildings and all of your fancy credentials and everything. Why don't you respect those of us that are doing the healing while you do the trauma work? And we can work side by side and respect each other. That's what I would like to see. So thank you for joining me. And I think I covered everything, and you have a great night. See you soon.